Well, let's do this, Tucker Carlson. People have to understand that prior to 9/11, this is all we heard from right-wing media, was how horrific New York was. They hated New York. And then after 9/11, there was like a respite. And sure enough, like over the past couple of years, things have reverted to the mean. And there is this narrative that New York City is awash in crime. And let's play this, Tucker Carlson, and then we'll go through some facts and figures, because this narrative is being pushed, in part because Eric Adams, former cop, pushed it as his way of winning his election. But the reality is, by any measure other than, what happened in the years that we were locked down, New York City is not awash in crime, and particularly not relative to other big cities. But it's helpful, particularly when you want to attack let's say a city DA who happens to be black, or you just want to attack a city in general. Here is Tucker Carlson. Gets very nervous when he comes to New York from his studio up in Maine or his abode in Florida.
In our new Soros-inspired justice system, decent people are the criminals, while the criminals are now a protected class. Here's how it works. The people in charge unleash chaos in our cities, but if you dare to protect yourself or your family from that chaos, you wind up in handcuffs. What is this? Well, the name of this system of governance is anarcho-tyranny. You get state-sponsored anarchy accompanied by political tyranny. Since taking office, Bragg has done his best to increase the anarchy. He's increased the number of felony charges his office drops by nearly 40%. That includes almost half of all drunk driving charges. It's no longer really a crime to drive drunk in New York City. That's the anarchy part. But for those who step outside the political lines, it is tyranny. You'll remember the middle-aged bodega clerk called Jose Alba from the Dominican Republic. Bragg sent him to Rikers Island, one of the worst prisons in the world, for daring to defend himself against a lunatic who was trying to murder him. So now this very same system, the system that imprisoned Jose Alba and chained Musa Diarra to his hospital bed, this Soros-inspired and backed system, is putting Joe Biden's main political opponent in the upcoming presidential race on trial for a crime that's not actually a crime. This is the political tyranny part of anarcho-tyranny. So for our existing legal system, this appears to be a point of no return. And you would think the media would point that out. Even if they support it, this is a big change from the way the country has run for hundreds of years. But no, because they're too dumb, too shallow, and above all, too self-interested. So Trump's upcoming arraignment tomorrow isn't a turning point in our country's legal system. It's yet another chance to follow Trump around in the hope that ratings will return.
I mean, the idea that you wouldn't pursue, obvious criminal, criminal wrongdoing in a democracy because the guy's former president and may run again or is running again is absurd. And, it's going to be interesting to see if they bring an arraignment in Georgia, the reaction here. But let's just get into the whole crime. Like, I don't think personally anybody should be sent to Rikers. I think Rikers should be closed. I don't think we should have it. Tucker Carlson doesn't care anything about criminal justice reform or reforming the carceral state. He doesn't care anything about a guy who owns a bodega, beyond the value it gives him to talk about how Trump is really oppressed or making some type of argument that there's state-sponsored anarchism. But you've heard like the story that in 2022, crime jumped 22% relative to 2021. And crime, we should say, robbery. It's primarily robberies, but some felony assaults also went up during that time. And theft, grand larceny. Burglaries went up from 2021 to 2022 in New York City. That is true. Coming out of the pandemic, there was this bump in crime, just like there was in every big city around the country. But if you look at the 2022 numbers and compare it to the 2000 numbers, when Saint Rudy Giuliani was America's mayor, just serving his time in New York City, you will see that grand larceny of a motor vehicle was definitely double that of today. That grand larceny in general was almost the exact same as it was in 2022. These are 2022 numbers and versus 2000. Burglary was twice as large, more than twice as large. 38,352 burglaries as opposed to less than 16,000 in 2022.
And that's interesting, by the way, that you point out that statistic, because I think that's a lot of the grounds for the right-wing critique of what Bragg has done, reducing things like robberies in some instances from felonies to misdemeanors. And that's why the felony prosecution is down a little bit, is my understanding.
Felony assaults in 2000, almost identical to what they were in 2022. And this is after a 20% bump in some of these because, coming out of the pandemic and the lockdown. The number of robberies as opposed to burglaries, twice as many in 2000 than there is in 2022. And remember, a lot of those assaults and stuff like this happened on the subway where the ridership had not quite returned. Things were just not normal. I mean, it was a little bit spooky in the early days in 2022 on the subway. Rapes are down by almost 25% from where they were in 2000. And murders are down also by about 20 to 25% as to where they were in the year 2000. So this idea that New York, and just keep in mind how exalted Rudy Giuliani is for supposedly bringing down the crime rates. I would suggest that's a function of lead and other factors. But when we got rid of leaded gasoline, you can see crime dropping across the country in high concentrations of where lead was rolled back, and internationally, you can see the same dynamic. But regardless of what it was, Rudy Giuliani is given all this credit of keeping crime down. The only difference between now and the year 2000, Rudy Giuliani's last as mayor, is that crime is down significantly from then.
Yeah.
Or the same. And so, and of course, New York City, no more danger than, around the country. In fact, in terms of murders, the New York City is doing much better than other big cities. So, I mean, this whole crime narrative is BS.
Well, it's being aided by Eric Adams. Eric Adams was on Barry Weiss's podcast yesterday. I mean, I sent this and then I said to Bradley it wasn't really worth it too much to pull it because he didn't say too much except that he said, like, we are going after homeless people. I mean, he was essentially bragging to Barry Weiss saying that their involuntary hospitalization program, which is something that has been implemented under Eric Adams, where if you're exhibiting signs, according to police, of mental health issues, if you're defecating in public or something like that, they can involuntarily hospitalize you. But they basically pawned it off to the ER. And ER workers are like, we don't know what to do or how to deal with this exactly. But there's that tension there with the mayor, who is pushing this tough on crime approach and gets no credit from Fox News, of course, and their efforts to attack Alvin Bragg. So it's just like, if people like Tucker Carlson were actually interested in reducing crime as opposed to creating a permanent underclass of poor people and non-white people in our prison systems, they would guarantee housing. Like, there's just raising the standard of living in a city where, like, I saw some article in Bloomberg, if you make $100,000 in New York, they said it's equivalent to like making $38,000 elsewhere. I mean, the standard of living in the city for people who are not wealthy, it's really incredibly difficult. If he were to just do that and tackle that, that would help reduce crime because it would decrease the desperation that people feel. But someone like Tucker Carlson's not interested in that. They just want more militancy on our streets so that you keep certain populations in line and make them, as I said, a permanent underclass that is much more desperate to serve capitalists.
Let's go to the phones, 646-257-3920.